Rolling eventually.
All right, so we are on our what now? Number 17?
The Philly
Maybe?
was 14, so this is probably 16.
Okay, so number 16 or
Yep.
something. I'm not really sure, but you know what? I know that you probably know better, so we'll just call it
Well, I
number.
know Philly was 14 because I was hoping it would be 13.
Oh, is that like
So
your
and it
lucky
was one
number?
more. Well, no, just 13, the unlucky number. I was kind of hoping my episode would be 13. It was one more, and we've only done the movie since then. So yeah, this is 16.
All right, cool. So we're on episode number 16 or show number 16 or whatever this is. This is just
Well,
a hint.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
anyway, welcome guys. Thank you for
All right.
coming in. I messaged Jeremy and I'll try and add him as we're going along. And this is also in honor of Jeremy's birthday. I
Mhm.
actually sent him something and it should be arriving to him shortly. I got a tracking number on it, so yay! Um, so we are covering episodes 23 through 26,
Yes.
so all four. Anybody wants to start?
Okay. Starting with 23. Very interesting episode. It's about a cult leader, and it seemed very inspired by Heaven's Gate.
I
So
forgot Heaven.
basically, the ones who were waiting for the Hellbop comet,
Yes, yes,
Marshall
that's what.
Applewhite, that whole thing. Basically, there's this cult leader who is broadcasting, interrupting all of these. I want to say I'll call them TV shows. I don't know what they're called in the Bebop universe in 2071, but all these broadcasts. And then there's this rash of suicides of people who are connected to this cult. And Faye is already. Faye shows up at one of their meetings,
Mhm.
and you don't know if she's really part of it or if she's just trying to track down the cult leader because she found out about the bounty. And then Spike and Jet find out about the bounty, and then they go after him. But the
One thing
interesting
I
thing is,
wanted to. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
the interesting thing is, it seemed very influenced or inspired by Heaven's Gate, but that was only a year before. I looked it up. That was '97. So
Interesting.
it was either luck and just they happened to strike on something similar, or they got to work very quickly when that happened.
One thing that I really liked about this episode is the a way that they describe um, the brainwave control device as well as the cult itself, the scratch migration to electronics movement.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning of the episode, what I really liked was the way that they were discussing the third eye, and it was very spiritual awakening, abandon your desires, abandon your humanity type
Borrowed
of
a lot from Eastern
concept.
philosophy, yeah,
Yes,
which a lot of those organizations do.
and then they also go to the clips of the television shows,
Mm-hmm.
which, as we find out later on in the episode, has a good play on the situation.
Oh yeah.
I love the DJ while you work out and
Mm-hmm.
the reality TV stuff going on, which
If
it
you
would have been really apparent
if you've ever
just at
seen
that time.
Oh yeah, and if you've ever seen Amazon Women on the Moon or Kentucky Fried Movie, it reminded me very much of those. They were parodies of TV and movies that kind of were shown in kind of in vignettes and direct parodies. And there was one in particular in the episode that I loved because they completely took a direct shot at Jerry Springer. Like the
Yeah,
set and everything was the Jerry Springer show.
yeah, I love that. I actually put that in there at one point because going to reality TV,
Hmm.
Jerry Springer was pretty big at that
Yeah.
time. So
Now, did they ever explain the numbers at the top right of this in the TV broadcasts?
no, I thought those were just the channels.
Okay, that makes sense. I couldn't quite figure it out. I was looking for a pattern, but yeah, that makes sense that they were the channel numbers. Yeah, that you mentioned it. Another interesting thing about this is we don't see any of the regulars until 5 minutes into the episode.
I didn't even
Meaning,
notice that.
it's 5 minutes and change before we see Faye. Everything
Yeah,
else,
we see her on the screen where she's
mhm,
talking
yeah.
about her. belief or whatever in the movement.
Yeah.
And I actually thought, like, when we saw Faye, she didn't seem like she was acting. Like, she seemed like she
Yeah.
was really into it,
Hmm.
which was very interesting to me.
And it kind of connects to what you were saying about the movie, how it sort of explains things that happened in this last group of episodes.
Hmm.
Particularly Faye getting tired of being a bounty hunter and wanting to kind of retire.
Yeah. Leandro, you're so quiet.
Yeah, I'm listening to catch up, and at the same time I'm wrapping up on a remnant report that I had due from yesterday.
Okay.
But trust, I will contribute
Okay.
by and by.
No problem. So going forward, I love the scene where we see Faye and she's with Dr. Londres and he's like on the screens with all the wires. It totally reminded me of Lane.
Yes. Yes.
And this episode gave me so much of Lane that I was sitting there going, because I don't remember, when did Lane come out? It was around the same time.
Yeah, it was around this. It was the late '90s. This was sort of the.
I wonder if it came out relatively within the similar time period that they got that influence, or vice versa. Are you looking it up, John?
Yeah, I'm looking up Lane.
I think that was what.
I think it was 98.
Yeah, like
98. Same year as Bebop, 98.
I'm good. 98.
Awesome.
Called it. Nice. Yeah. So when I saw that, I was sitting there going, "Oh, it's Lane." Like, because also a lot of the themes that are presented about what is your reality, where are you dreaming, and what is consciousness, and so on and so forth. Like, a lot of these themes, which become even more prevalent as the show continues in the next episodes, really reminded me of Lane, especially when we start talking about the consciousness and TV and how things are kind of dictated to us, sort of bit. Like, I really got that influence there.
Particularly the organic-looking stack of monitors.
Yes.
In the lair. That really that is very reminiscent of Lane's Navi toward the later episodes.
Yes, and I wrote like big, like Lane Londres, like it totally made that connection right away. So going forward, we are introduced to this cult, and we are told that there's this Dr. Londres, and he is the cult leader and the creator, and so he's also on the hit list for bounty hunters, because he's attributed directly as being the first-degree murderer of all these people, because they've also are committing suicide or they're going missing. So we don't really know how he's involved, but according to the bounty hunter watch list, he's considered as the murderer.
And we also go into some backstory on him and how he invented the brainwave interface about 50 years ago and then disappeared up until the last couple of years, where he came back as this cult leader.
Yes, and I actually was thinking Battlestar Galactica here.
Okay.
Like, I was thinking Caprica.
Okay, yeah.
Prequel to Battlestar Galactica, where you've got the virtual reality world takeover, and that question of consciousness, like you're conscious in the virtual reality world, yet you're also conscious outside of the virtual reality world, so therefore it kind of melts into what is the reality, so to speak. So that was
the Lane again.
Yeah, exactly. Going back to Lane, I mean, it's all similar themes there. And one of the things that I really loved about this episode is we get a little more Big Shot reference.
We get the final Big Shots.
Yes.
With the last episode.
Because unfortunately, the Big Shot said that they had to cancel the show because of the ratings. And the funniest thing is the blonde girl in the show,
when her accent drops,
her head like just starts going, "Wait, what? I I'm going to talk to my agent about this. Yeah. She's just like, no way, that can't be the case. You can't cancel the show. So I love that. And Big Shot goes on when they're talking about Dr. Landis and basically saying, hey, we have no information on this guy. Nobody knows anything. And maybe he's a body without a soul, or a soul without a body. And they just keep going on and on about that. And it's funny because before that, Spike is trying to figure out who this Dr. Landis is, and he figures, I'm going to join the cult. If I join the cult, then I'll meet Dr. Landis. I'll be able to apprehend him and get all this money. But when he's asking the cult followers and the recruiters about wanting to meet Dr. Landis, they're telling him that he's out in the universe. So clearly there's...
I liked how Jet and Spike took completely different approaches. Both Spike and Faye essentially end up sort of inside the cult.
Yeah.
Whereas Jet was just going completely over the top and like going through Landis's backstory.
Yeah. And he also knocks on his ISSP connections to figure out like what they know and if there's any further information that they can give him, which is how he gets his backstory on Dr. Landis. And of course, Edward is there to help him hack everything.
Yeah. And I love the scene where he was lined up with the kids to buy the brainwave interface.
Yes. The brainwave dream, or brain dream, yeah.
Which was very almost, I guess prescient wouldn't really be the correct word, but very forward-thinking in terms of the writers. When now we have things like the Oculus and the Kinect.
Well, again, like I said, it goes back to, actually, I thought of also Sword Art Online, because they have the virtual unit, and then they put your consciousness into that virtual world, and if you die actually in the real world. So I thought that was a lot of interesting plays, because that's something that moving forward in our future, we're starting to play around with more and more, the concepts of virtual worlds and virtual realities. And I was actually reading a really good article that was talking about how what we portray in the internet world, if you will, and what is our reality, and how we try to put our image of who we want to be out there in the universe, and that becomes like our consciousness, if you will.
Reminds me of probably my favorite Vonnegut quote. We must be careful what we pretend to be, because we are what we pretend to be.
That's good, yeah.
That's good.
Exactly, absolutely. So
we also, in this episode, finally find out what a data dog is.
Yes. Ein really had a part in this episode, more so than any other episode we've really seen Ein in. Ein Ein saved Jet from losing it completely, essentially, when they purchased this brainwave device. It goes through and it tells you basically the setup and this and that, and when Jet puts it on his head, he starts to lose it. There's like a high...
He starts getting pulled in.
And he said that if Ein hadn't bit him and hadn't, created that commotion, then he would have been sucked in.
But then, they try it with Jet. He can't get in. He gets, almost subjugated by it. Ed can't crack it. They put the headset on Ein, and it just unlocks in seconds.
Yep.
And they're inside of I think it's the cult's site.
The mainframe, essentially, of the...
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Then they're able to figure out where the... I want to say it's almost like the ISP address was.
Yeah, they're basically able to triangulate the transmissions. And figure out exactly where the cult... I forgot his name, the cult leader. They figure out exactly where he is. Which is in a hospital. And
Edward is in a dress.
Loved Edward in a dress. That was just surreal.
That was the cutest thing ever. Edward in a dress and Jet in a suit, and they're pretending to be father and daughter. Really adorable little scene there. And then they find out that Landis never existed.
They find the actual source of the transmissions just as Spike finds Faye.
Mm-hmm.
in this sort of inner sanctum where they have this organic-looking stack of monitors. And they find out that it's this 13-year-old who was in an accident and had his brain directly connected to their version of the internet, and had basically taken Londa's identity. He wasn't the real Londa's because he was way too young, but he'd taken his name and his identity to perpetrate this cult because he was in a vegetative state, and all that was really left of him was his mind on the internet.
Yeah. And another thing is that when Spike confronts Londis in the Lane-esque, structure of screens and wires, that's when he discovers that Londis never existed, because Londis himself says, I don't exist. I'm just this thing that was created, and I'm a counterfeit. I'm a fake. So.
And then he goes on this anti-TV rant, which at the same time, it was heavy-handed and kind of annoying, but at the same time, given the fact that it was on a TV show, I kind of like it.
I love that, too. That he was kind of making fun of himself, sort of thing. And and I like that he continues on and is like, why do people believe in God? And it says because the world is ugly and corrupt and there's no certainty, so people created God. And he's saying, what is the worst device that humans ever created? And that is the television, because it's become essentially a religion, and people are molding their beliefs and their understanding of the world based on this device, which was very interesting because he's sitting there communicating to Spike and to Faye through the television.
On a TV show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I really like that. And I love Spike's response, because he's like, you know what, I'm kind of over this. You're talking a bunch of bullshit. I don't really want to deal with this. So he tells him, you're like a kid with a toy, and he says, if you want to dream, do it yourself. So he's saying basically, like, he's shutting him down, saying, you're just talking a bunch of nonsense, and you're just trying to create something, but you're using other people for it, so why don't you just do it yourself and stop this? And as he is talking to Londis, a.k.a. this child hacker, Jet and Edward finds the hacker himself, and they pretty much disarm his control over.
They disconnect him from the network.
Bingo. So, and he's starting to say it was all a dream. It was I totally made a Biggie reference here. It was all a dream.
Nice.
Actually, it was Biggie's birthday recently, so rest in peace, Biggie. But it was all a dream, but dark dreams, and he was talking like how everything kind of culminated, and instead of it being something positive, it became really negative. And then Edward tells him, I hope you have sweet dreams now, which I thought was really, really nice. And he's going on, Londis is still on the TV, and he's saying the body is a shell too small and weak for the consciousness's potential. So I actually saw Lucy recently, and that was a terrible movie. The ending was very anticlimactic, but the concept of us transcending consciousness in human form was really cool. It was very interesting. I mean, essentially, Lucy gains more and more usage of her brain, more percentages of her brain, and the more she gains, the more she can control metabolism, change the structure of her body, her cells themselves, her nuclei. Like, it's a great, out there concept.
Oh yeah.
But the ending sucked. I really didn't like it. So if you were watching it, if you're going to watch it, I'm just preparing you for that.
I was thinking about it, but I think I'll skip it then.
I watched it. I mean, I like the movie, but I mean, there and again, I think movies like Lucy and I'll throw in The Matrix in there as well because they both deal with that kind of existentialism. It all depends on what you want out of it. You know what I mean? Like if you are
Yeah.
going into a movie like Lucy looking for the adventure and the excitement of the Matrix, yeah, you're really not going to like that
Okay.
movie,
Oh,
especially
okay.
yeah, just to set it
So
up.
it's not a shut your brain off and enjoy the ride kind of movie.
No, it's definitely
Well, that's
interesting
good.
in
Well,
terms of the scientific aspect of it, and I
that
mean, we don't know. We really don't know because we only use such a small
well, no,
percentage.
that's actually where I was going to go. It's interesting that they took the more intellectual approach when it's based on a myth. It's not true that we only use 10% of our brain.
Really,
That's a myth. We
Yeah,
use the
it's
whole
not.
thing.
we use the whole thing?
Yeah. We don't just use 10% of our brain. That's a myth.
Huh.
So,
Well, higher than 10%, but not. It's never been proven that we use 100%, right?
well, we use different parts of our brain at different times, but we use the whole thing, overall.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if it was just an enjoy the ride kind of movie, I could let that go, and just
Right.
it's fun. But if they're actually trying to be intellectual about it, then I have to really take issue with basing the whole thing on a myth.
Huh.
Because I wasn't crazy about the Matrix. It was okay,
Mhm.
but it's really just to sit back, shut your brain off, and enjoy the ride kind of movie. So I can't really nitpick.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, for me, I like the Matrix just as a concept, like that we're sitting here, and then I love in the Matrix where he's eating the steak and he said, this is a steak, but is it really a steak type of thing, and he's like,
Mhm.
it tastes like a damn steak to me and it tastes really good, so,
Yeah.
I'm willing to
Ignorance is
sell
bliss.
out for what I think is the best flavor that I can have.
Exactly.
And it goes back to the whole philosophy of like David Hume, if you
Yeah,
will.
or Plato the cave.
Or, right, Plato in the Cave, where you're talking about, wow, we got really intellectual with this one. Wow.
This is the episode to do it.
So yeah, but it goes on, like with David in the Hume, where he's saying like, just because you see a certain color, is that really the color? And we're all limited by our perceptions. I mean, I have a friend of mine who's pregnant right now, and they were talking about how their senses of smell and so on and so forth are certainly heightened, and they can't even go in the grocery store because they're
Wow.
so
Yeah.
disturbed by it.
Right.
So, I mean, we're always limited or advanced by our senses of what we can do and what we can, perceive with our senses. So, and I watched a really interesting TED Talk recently on exoskeletons. We were talking about exoskeletons
Yeah.
before, remember, John? So, and also there's a gentleman who he's actually working in MIT, like developing all this stuff for prosthetic limbs. And what he's saying is that we can actually push the boundaries of our human limitations. And like, for instance, he's a huge ice climber, and he was a big rock climber, prior to losing his legs. And it was really interesting because he's saying how something that we would perceive as a limitation allows us to actually take on
Yeah.
new technology and also improve upon our human limitations, if
Yeah.
you will. So,
Yeah.
really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it, but I would totally send you the link for it.
Please do.
Yeah, it was really, really good. So back to Cowboy Bebop. So
Yeah, I
so
noticed we went off on a tangent. Yeah, I wanted to add in, there was another significant moment in episode 23 in my mind, and that was, Punch no longer doing the cast for the news there. I think I don't know if he was fully replaced or not, but I know he was definitely laid off. And yeah, and for me, I kind of like those little interludes where
yeah,
Punch and Judy,
yeah.
right? So yeah, I think that was a significant change.
The end of Big Shots was great. And we'll get to 24, or I think it's no 25 or
25,
26, 25, where we see the
25 where we see Punch.
final reference to Big Shots. Yeah.
Yeah. And so going forward, I like the preview in 23 because all we have is Edward humming, and it kind of is really symbolic to me, because it's Edward's story, but it's also Faye's story.
Yeah.
So it's a story of how the girls are gonna figure out their backgrounds and.
Well, it gives closure to both of them.
Yes, and I mean it's just Edward humming the whole time, and I thought that was an interesting way to introduce episode 24, which was such a bittersweet episode, you know. And so it's Edward humming like all sweet and like very innocent, like you know. So that said, going into 24. We start off with seeing Faye just replaying her tape that she was given over and over.
To call back to the tape, you know, because they hadn't really talked about it in a bit, and I felt like it should have received more attention than it did in that initial episode. So I'm glad to see them go back to it. Yeah, well, just her past and you know her effort, her attempts to figure out who she was. I kind of feel like I'm glad that they pursued that a bit more.
Yeah.
And really brought it to a close.
Yeah, I think you know, for the last few episodes we haven't really discussed. I mean, it was shown, you know, the tape was shown, but beyond that, you know, I mean, to me, if I had just discovered my past, you know, or pieces of my past, and I had no idea who I was up until this point, I would be pretty intrigued, you know, if not obsessed about this tape and finding out more information about it, finding about, you know, like I wouldn't be as nonchalant and going into other bounty hunting expositions when I'm sitting here with a piece of my past that I don't even know who I am, you know, is this really my life, et cetera, you know.
Right.
And for her to just be so nonchalant about it for the last few episodes was very, you know, I can totally agree. Like, I actually was expecting Faye to be more disturbed by it than anything else.
Really, if you think about Faye's character, it makes sense, because she pushes everything to the back.
That's true. That's a really good point, because, you know, Faye's always abandoning, if you will, her emotional side for just being impulsive, kind of like Spike, you know. She has that I'm going to just go and do this sort of thing and forget about what's been happening.
Right.
So they kind of work together in terms of their similarities in characters.
Yeah.
And I loved Ed's little bit of word salad when Faye asks if she knew where this fountain was, because Ed had said that something on the tape looked familiar. And I don't remember the whole run, but it ended with "I don't think I think." Which I loved.
She's saying she's sleepwalking and talking almost, and she's saying, "I think I know, or no, not, no, not." And she's like going back and forth, and Faye is like, "Do you know?"
And then it looks. Well, I couldn't tell if Faye was trying to basically revive Ed, and it looked because Ed kind of passes out at that point.
I thought she kissed Ed.
I couldn't tell if she kissed him or tried to give her mouth the mouth.
I think she just kissed her to be like, shut up, come on, like get out of it, snap out of it, type of thing, which I thought was really funny. And then, so while this is going on, apparently there was a detour.
They ended up on Earth when they were headed to Mars.
Exactly, and Jet is like, how did we end up here?
Only on the second viewing did I connect it. Ed commandeered the ship.
Yes. And I love that Spike says, "Oh, Jet, the girls are gone," you know? And I actually had to rewind it because I thought he said, "Dad, the girls are gone."
Are you my dad now?
Because, you know, I mean, it plays into the whole father figure that we've got, and this episode really ramps up on the father figure that's going on.
And his cadence on the line, would fit that. If he had said that, his cadence would have been perfect for that.
Yes. And so Faye and Edward decide that they're going to go to Earth because
there's a fountain in the videotape, or in the Betamax tape, that Ed said looked familiar. So they go looking for it, and Ed is strapped to the outside of Faye's ship, actually to the bottom, and they're flying over, over the area, and Ed is supposed to sight it when she sees it, which is hilarious.
And they take a little detour from the fountain as well.
And we finally get some backstory on Ed.
Which I love. I absolutely thought was fantastic. We finally get to, the way the nun, it seemed like it was like an orphanage that she walked into.
Yeah.
And they all knew Edward. So at the bottom of this trash pile is like a little city where all these kids are. And that's where they live. That's where, essentially they're being taken care of by this nun. And the nun was saying how, oh, Edward, you're back, And so they make lunch or whatever for them. And Edward is described as she wandered in to this orphanage and then stayed there for a few years and then wandered away like a stray cat, which is a really nice way to describe her as a stray cat.
And I get the impression her father went off somewhere to work and left Ed alone, and so Ed just happened to stroll into this orphanage one day.
Yeah.
But, it's nice here. I like it here. I'll stay for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we find out that the nun had been saving a gift for Edward, which was like a holographic book of her father. And when the nun is talking...
Who also coincidentally has a bounty on his head.
Of course he does. And when the nun is talking, she says, in this world, people must cherish whatever ties they have. Which is really... I would also say it's very symbolic as well of the Bebop crew. And how they should cherish each other, and it also it's also foreshadowing, in my opinion, the outcome of what was going to happen, especially for Edward and going forward, and as well as for Faye, because we all know where Faye is going to end up. So after this exchange, Faye tells Edward, hey, you're supposed to take me to this fountain. And so they go off, and Faye runs into an old classmate of hers, and she recognizes Faye instantly. And the classmate's name is Sally Young.
Okay.
And for me, I thought that was really funny because she's not young.
She's in her 70s like Faye is, except she looks it.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
And the age, I wrote, of course, it's the age Faye should be if she was in normal standing, if you will.
If she hadn't been cryogenically frozen for 54 years.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we learn a little bit more because Sally Young says, "Oh, I can't believe you don't remember the accident and what happened to you. I have a feeling that maybe the Betamax tape was sent by Sally Young."
Interesting.
Which, because she knew her instantly, and I didn't know that Faye's name was Faye Valentine from beforehand.
Yeah, well, it's when the doctor who took care of her, who she owes the money to, claims to have named her Faye Valentine, but
correct.
wasn't exactly he wasn't a reliable witness, I'll put it that way.
Well, what I thought was really interesting was that Sally Young knew her as Faye Valentine.
I suspect that really was her name. The doctor was just taking credit for it.
Yeah, which I thought was very interesting too. So after that encounter with her classmate and her classmate's granddaughter's running up, and Sally Young says, "Oh, I want to introduce you," and then Faye just says, "I'm a ghost from beyond," which I thought was really interesting because Faye, to me, at this point, had a recognition of, okay, I don't fit in that life. I don't fit with those people. I'm in a different place. And it kind
of in between that at this point. She was still trying
yeah,
to figure out where she fit.
yeah. You're right. Because it's kind of like but she knew that she didn't fit with Sally Young.
She
She
was
knew
getting a hint of that. Yeah.
So, and then let's see.
Then Spike and Jet track down the bounty, and Ed happens to be there, so Ed introduces them to quote unquote the father person.
Oh, you skipped a bit.
I did skip a bit. Okay.
Yeah. So Jet, when Faye and Edward come back to the ship, Jet reprimands them like a good father.
Yes.
Says, I don't appreciate the kind of stunts that you girls pull, because he's saying how they were supposed to be going to Mars and somehow they ended up on Earth. And so Jet tells them, oh, we have a bounty. And in the meantime, Faye is just in this like whirlwind of emotions and recognition of things. I mean, now she's starting to really remember, and she is just sitting there and just pondering over things. And then she's in the shower, and she has this clear moment where everything comes back to her. She remembers the accident. She remembers her parents. She remembers the moon. It was the moon, right? Or was it the gate?
Well, it was when the gate exploded and just
and
the moon and yeah.
Right. So she remembers all of this, and it all comes back to her, and she just completely loses it. And she runs into Spike, and Spike is like, hey, and she's like, oh, I'm sorry. And
that was when Faye really got back a piece of who she was, I felt.
In that moment, when she
was that whole scene where I think the apology to Spike was proof that she was getting back to who she had been before the accident.
Yeah, I think Spike noticed there was something different because Faye would have normally come off with some smart-ass comments, and instead she apologized to him. And he was like, wait, what? Who is this Faye? This is not the Faye that I know. So
it was both surprising and off-putting.
Yes. And we also find out the bounty is for Edward's dad.
Yeah. Who has just as ridiculous a name as Edward does.
Yes, Appleberry.
Well, not just that, but just the whole long. He's got about 5 names, and they're all.
Yeah. I didn't catch all of them, but I thought that was pretty hilarious that he has an even more ridiculous name than Edward. So, and Faye runs off the ship, and Edward finds her, and Faye says, I remember where I belong. You have somewhere you belong. Belonging is the best thing. And so Faye takes off, and Jet says, where are these going again? He says, a woman's heart is as fickle as the skies on Ganymede, which I thought was really funny, because what was it? From before, Spike said that he doesn't like kids and he doesn't like women.
Women with attitudes. Kids, animals, and women with attitudes.
Yeah. So, and Jet is there like, oh, we're gonna have to deal with this again. More Faye drama. So we see a little bit more of Edward's father, and Jet and Spike decide to go after this bounty because they think it's 50 million wulongs. So they're like, oh my god, that's it, we gotta go. It's 50 million wulongs. We'll be able to eat forever. So they go after Appleberry, and Appleberry's like, oh no, we're map updaters. Like, there's the chaos, and we're fixing the chaos.
Earth was destroyed. They're basically mapping what it is now after the accident.
Which is really funny because it's something they totally came up with on the fly. Like, clearly they're doing something else, and at least in my opinion, they were.
I bought it.
You bought it?
That's what he's trying to do now. I don't know what the bounty was for, but now whatever he had done to get to put the price on it, said now this is it's a money making opportunity. Obviously, he's not doing it for any good intention. He's doing it to profit. But I completely believe that that's what he was legit trying to do.
And then Appleberry goes forward and happens to kick like Spike's ass.
Well, because they point the guns at him because there's a price on his head.
Yeah.
Appleberry, Ed's father, has these basket of eggs he carries because that's all he eats apparently, and he throws eggs at them, hits their guns perfectly, disarms them effectively, and then Spike tries to kick his ass, and I don't know what it is. It's only the second time I think in the series, but I just love seeing Spike get his ass kicked.
It's hilarious. I think it's one of the funniest things to see when Spike actually is getting his ass kicked. It's just funny.
Because Appleberry just doesn't kick his ass. He just avoids him enough. He's just a step ahead of Spike the whole time.
Right. The whole entire time, and it was just crazy just watching that. Right. I'm thinking hilarity.
Spike effectively kicks his own ass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's kind of like, remember in the episode where they're in the flight and Spike just is waking up and it's like he's not really fighting, he's just more like avoiding the fight, but it happens to be fighting because he's avoiding the fight. So to me, what was really funny in the way that Appleberry kicks his ass is that he has a very similar fighting style to Spike because he's kind of just trying to avoid the fight the whole time. So, and then Edward pulls in with this giant ship and saves the day, which is fantastic. I love it. I love that Edward's sitting there on the helm. And
commandeering the Bebop once again. Just showing how much of a badass Ed really is when she wants to be.
Right. And then she jumps down and swoops in, and the father catches her by her ankles.
And he calls her Francoise.
Yeah, which I was like, wait, is that one of
another
Ed's
name?
names?
No, that's not one of Ed's known names.
So that's why I thought it was really funny. And Edward says, "This is the father person," and then Spike says, "You have a father." And then the father says, "My son," or was it my daughter?
He's not even sure.
And then they're sitting there and talking, and then we cut to Faye, and Faye is decided that she's going to go forward and try to find this fountain. And she's running, and it's a split between her as a little girl running to this house.
Running up these stairs that I'm assuming it was her home back 50-something years ago.
And so it's like her consciousness shifted towards her younger self in that moment until she's running and she reaches the home, and the home is nothing but rubble. There's nothing left of the home. So I actually, it's funny because if you're guided by your past continuously, you're going back, it's going to lead you to the ruins, if you will, of your past. That's what I wrote down.
Also, it's a prelude to the next two.
Yes, very much so. Where you keep running after your past, the past is going to destroy you, type of thing. And
then we see the final departure of Ed.
Yeah, and the music was so sad.
Yeah, I was just really sad. Like you said earlier, it's a bittersweet episode, and I remembered that this wasn't Faye's accident from the series, but I knew it was Ed's. And as much as Ed kind of irritated me at times, I was sad to see her go.
Yeah. I thought that part that really sealed it home was when Jet says dinner's ready, and as we've established previously that Jet is the father figure of the show.
Yeah, definitely.
And he sets out all the plates for everybody, and he realizes that his family has dwindled by 2. And Ein is also gone. Yeah. And so there's Spike and there's Jet, and he says bye-bye, in big letters on the floor. And when Edward's leaving, Ein is trying to get Edward to come back, and Edward says, "Listen, no, I gotta go. Like, this is, I don't know. I'm probably not gonna come back, so you gotta go back to the ship." And Ein is like, "No, I'm not leaving." because we've established they have this connection, like this some sort of
Yes.
uh I don't know, alternate connection, if you will.
Yeah, well, somehow Ed can understand, possibly because of her acting ability, can understand Ein better than anyone else can. Almost like there's some kind of code in the way Ein barks or moves or something that Ed can read.
Yeah, and that made me really sad.
Hmm.
Um, and then the saddest part for me was when Jet and Spike start to eat their shares, if you will, of dinner
Hmm.
of the eggs.
Yeah.
So, and that was
That was 24.
24. And Faye hasn't come back to the ship yet.
No.
And the preview for episode 25 was just very sad. It's everything has an end, and it's going on and on about how these are the last 2 episodes of the show.
Hmm.
The past is going to come back.
Hmm.
You can't run from your past, essentially. And so now we are going into episode 25.
Which very nicely tells back to the beginning and the middle of the series, because we started with Spike's background, and then we had Fallen Angels, and now we have the conclusion of all of that.
Yes, and Jupiter Jazz. It's
Mhm.
also bringing that back as well. Where we've got we finally really get to meet Julia and know who Julia is, and understand why she's had such a profound effect on Spike.
Mhm.
It's because he loves her.
Yeah. Well, we kind of knew that from the beginning,
Right.
but now
And
we find out why she didn't show up.
yes. So you can go ahead and start if you want
It
on.
starts off with Vicious leading a coup against the elders who run the syndicate. And have the elders been mentioned before? Because I don't really remember them.
Yes.
They have been. Okay, I just
We're
forgot about
introduced to the elders in Fallen Angels.
it. Okay.
I want to say we were introduced to the elders there. Also Vicious and Jupiter Jazz
Okay.
was
I think this is
the
probably
elders.
okay. I had completely forgotten about that. But
Yeah.
Vicious attempts to kill the elders and thereby take over the syndicate. They completely swerve him, and they were hiding somewhere else. And then their guards come in and capture him, and he's basically sentenced to death.
And Vicious tells them though pretty much like, I'm not done.
Hmm.
Says a serpent's venom poisons slowly after the bite.
Yeah.
So it tells you that they should be careful. They thought that they think they have him, but they should be a little careful about,
Yeah.
the fact that they might not really have him.
Right. And all I could think of with this episode was I think it was a Pacino in Heat. Just when I think I'm out, they pull me back in.
Yeah.
Just when Spike thinks he's out, Vicious and Julia pull him back in.
I also thought about Ronin. Did you ever see that with
I'm
Robert?
aware of it. I haven't seen it.
Oh, great show, great,
Okay.
great film. About the honor of samurai,
Uh-huh.
and the Ronin were, the Ronin.
Oh, yeah, the samurai without masters.
Yes. So I actually really thought of Ronin as Spike being that character, who unfortunately, as much as he tries, he's going to get pulled back into his past and into the situation. And he knows, like he's always known it.
Mhm.
You
And
know?
that's really what the entire series has been about. It's been about Spike's eventually getting pulled back and all of this being settled. That's what the entire series has been designed for. It's
Yeah,
really all about Spike.
The whole series is about Spike, and it's about his I think for the most part, and since we're concluding now with the show, like I think that the show has also been about his escape from his past and running from his past, and the final 2 episodes are his confronting the past finally.
Definitely.
And finally fully facing the reality of the situation. The fact that he I mean, it's so sad. It is sad because, as a viewer, you expect it and you know what's going to happen, but it still doesn't make it any nicer or any better, if you will. It doesn't make you feel any better about the situation.
And we finally find out what happened with him and Julia, because all we knew before this was he was leaving the syndicate and she was going to meet up. They were going to meet up and she was going to go with him, and she didn't show.
Right.
Now we find out that Vicious had told her that either she kills Spike or he kills both of them.
Yeah.
And so she didn't show, so she wouldn't have to kill him. She basically was taking the fall for him so he could get out.
Right. Going back into the episode, so after Vicious attempts to have a coup against the elders, Jet and Spike are sitting at a bar, and Jet says to him, "I understand why you have this attitude
That women
about women and
kids." Yeah.
And it's because, Jet clearly feels sad.
Yeah.
And Mrs. Faye, Mrs. Edward, Mrs. like the family of the ship, or the family, if you will. And all of a sudden, there's a shootout, and Spike and his crazy reflexes gets him and Jet, towards a more safe position, if you will, because there's a crazy shootout.
Behind the bar. The bartender dies. They dive behind the bar and hide.
Exactly. And Shin, who is one of the guys in the syndicate, who actually, I think, wanted to help Spike, comes and tells him, "Hey, you're a target now. Vicious will take over."
There were basically two factions. Spike's one was loyal to Spike, effectively. One was loyal to Vicious. Shin and his brother Shen were on opposite sides of that split.
Yes. So, and Shin tells him, you're a target now too, so that's why they're coming after you. And I love that in the middle of this crazy shootout, Spike says there's definitely too much vermouth. Because he's, sitting there in this crazy shootout, getting shot at, and that's...
And it's what Spike does, as we mentioned in the previous one. He pushes things down.
Yes.
Instead of freaking out, he'll get distracted by something.
So, I love that Jet is trying to, give him advice and tell him, like, look, it's not your problem anymore. You're not in the syndicate. It's your past. And then he says, listen, that, like, Vicious, those names, Vicious and Julia, are like a magic spell that unlocks a door that should stay closed.
That was Jet's line when he's getting his leg patched up.
Yes, as he's getting patched up, and then it's funny, he tells the doctor, hey, like, you didn't see us, nothing happened, and the doctor says, I'm just feeding some stray cats. So it's pretty funny to me. We've gotten a lot of references to cats.
Yeah, and there's a whole big speech later that's about cats,
Either specifically, we've gotten cats in the show, or we have gotten references to cats, or we've gotten... so I also think it's funny because it plays to the whole 9 lives of cats.
And also, cats were kind of a thing in anime at the time. Cats. There's the cat who shows up in every episode of Trigun. There's 2 cats that factor heavily into Fooly Cooly. And a lot of other anime at the time feature cats pretty heavily. So I don't know why, but it was a thing at the time.
Well, Leandre, I wish he was able to stay on. I guess he had to go. But Leandre, I would have liked, because he has a little more, I guess, background knowledge about Japanese culture, and I don't know if maybe, he can post that up in the community. But Leandre, if you know what symbolic wise cats are, that would be really cool to like add, to knowledge wise, and maybe that would help us to understand maybe their perception to cats, because cats are in a lot of anime actually. So now going forward, we find out here fully the story of Spike. The full background of how Spike was in the syndicate. Spike wanted to leave the syndicate. He wanted Julia to come with him, and he told her, like, let's go and let's just leave everything behind and let's just run away. And she tells him that to live living to be free would be like watching a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And she's basically saying, like, it's not possible for us to leave because they're going to come find us wherever we go because they're the syndicate. And so...
And that's when we find out that, you know, Spike had told her, well, meet me at the graves. I'll be by them, not in them.
Yeah.
And
that's when Vicious finds Julia, and Vicious tells Julia, you know what, keep dreaming, pretty much.
You kill him or I kill the both of you.
Exactly. So, and so basically he wakens her to reality, which is your dream's not going to happen. Either you're going to kill him or you're both going to be killed. Mm-hmm. So, and I love that we shoot to Faye. And Faye is like in an airport somewhere, mm-hmm. and we see this old woman who's saying, "I don't want to live a life where I'm away."
I loved her speech there, basically saying how she doesn't want to be in the way.
Yeah, and it kind of mimics how Faye feels about the Bebop and how she feels like, you know, she's just a burden or something to that effect, And then the old woman is saying how nobody kind of loves her, nobody wants to take care of her, and nobody's there for her. And then while she's saying all of that, Punch from Big Shot shows up, and he's telling her, "Oh, Mom, I'm so sorry. You know, like I got here as soon as I could. I looked everywhere."
Without the accent.
Huh?
Without the accent,
yeah, which was really funny because I didn't even recognize him at first.
Yeah, it took me a minute until... Actually, the first time I saw it, you know, a few weeks ago when I watched it, when I didn't realize it was him until the mother asked, you know, what happened to that woman you used to work with?
Yeah, and the blonde.
Yeah, the blonde girl you worked with.
And he says, "Oh, I think she's marrying her agent."
Yeah. I didn't realize it was him until that one.
Yeah, because the mother also says, like, "Oh, you know, what about your show?" And she said, "Well, I'll find another show." Yeah. So, and then when Faye sees that interaction, Faye realizes that I have my own place to go to. That's what she says to herself. But we know that that's not true. Yeah. You know, we know that she feels like she has nowhere else to go back to because she really doesn't. There's no.
Well, it's not even nowhere to go back to. She has nowhere to go because at that point she's not thinking about going back to the Bebop.
Right, right.
Lost.
Yeah, she says I have my own place to go back to, but she really doesn't. Yeah. And Julia comes in a red Corvette or red convertible, and car full of
guys chasing her, shooting at her. And Faye jumps in and starts shooting back at the guys chasing Julia. Yeah. Which seemed oddly heroic for Faye.
Yeah, Faye never really takes a position of putting herself in harm's way. So this was a really unique twist in her character where I thought was really interesting because for Faye to put herself out there and to be a character that is willing to fight, that was really unique and that was really different. And so I think that also speaks a lot to how her character has changed, where she's more caring, she's more, you know, I'm willing to put myself out there, you know. And also it happens to be that Julia comes around at a time where Faye is pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, and she's lost and she doesn't know where to go, and here's a bit of violence that I can step into and you know, maybe find somewhere to go. And I'm good at violence, so.
Yeah, she, you know, it might have been an opportunity thing where she just jumped in on it because she could. Yeah.
And there's a little bit of dialogue between Faye and Julia after, you know, all the cars have blown up. And, you know, she's the only one left.
I thought the greatest part about that dialogue is when they're talking about how their names are very common. Faye Valentine and Julia. Which I thought was really, really funny because I don't really think those names are that common.
Not really. Well, Julia somewhat. Faye, not so much.
Yeah, but Julia is more to me like star-crossed lovers Juliet, you know, what I think of. So, and that kind of fits with the whole
Oh
theme,
yeah, absolutely with Spike.
Spike and Julia, if you will.
And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it seemed like their dialogue about how maybe try working with another woman for a while, seemed a bit innuendo heavy.
In what way?
There were, it seemed almost like, my situation with this guy didn't work out, so maybe I'll try another woman.
I'm switching teams.
Yeah. Maybe try something a little different. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. It just seemed like that was very heavy on the innuendo.
I don't know if it was necessarily that was the case, though. That might have been your own perception.
Possibly.
There.
Very possible.
It's possible, though. You never know. I mean, we wouldn't know unless we ask
Ask the writers, yeah.
Yeah.
Something interesting I noticed about Faye, though, is particularly when Julia drops her off and says, give Spike a message for me. And Julia knows exactly who she is, and she knows that she knows Spike and that she's been on the Bebop, and it seems that Julia knows the whole story that has gone on that we've been watching for 24 episodes so far. And it seems to me that Faye is always a step ahead of everyone she's hunting, but a step behind everyone she's not hunting. Everyone who is an ally is a step ahead of Faye. Right. They always kind of know her better than she knows herself.
Huh. That's a good way to put that. I mean, as far as an analysis of Faye, I think that would be. I mean, it also makes sense though because emotionally she's not nearly as in tune with herself.
Right.
So those around her that really know her, if you will, even Edward really had a sense of Faye more so than Faye had of herself.
Oh, absolutely. And Spike and Jet definitely did. But Jet definitely did. Spike less so because Spike's got his own similar issues.
Spike has his own demons to worry about. So yeah, but definitely I think other people knew Faye had like where she was going, what she was thinking, what her next move was going to be essentially before she even did.
And it just seemed interesting, in contrast to the fact that when she's hunting a bounty, she's always a step ahead, and that's really her style through the whole thing. Is she doesn't fight much; she just anticipates every move and kind of catches them without having to fight.
Yeah. She's always the one that's the first to the scene, if you will, of the hunt. I mean, look at just the previous episode with the cult guy, and the previous one before that, where she was going after the hacker.
Right.
And then the one she was going after LeFou. So she's always trying to be one step ahead of everyone. Even when she was technically on vacation when she met Gren, she was still happened to be in the situation ahead of time than everybody else.
Right.
So it's either for better or for worse that she's continuously attracting bad people.
Yeah. I also noticed that a lot of the show seems to revolve around Mars.
Yeah.
It always goes back to Mars.
Yeah, I wonder what the deal is with Mars. We're always going back to Mars. We're always talking about Mars. Mars had a big part to do in Spike's life. Yeah. I think it also had a big part to do with Jet's life.
Yeah, I think that's where Gren was experimented on. That's where when he was in the military. So a lot of it, and the movie took place on Mars.
Yep. Yeah, I wonder what the big drive was to use Mars so much.
Possibly just because it's the next one after Earth, and it's just it's the next logical step, I guess.
Maybe that was the case. So continuing forward, when Faye tells, when Julia tells Faye, tell Spike if you see him, I'll be waiting there, and he'll know what I mean. And we see Jet and Spike on the Bebop, and Jet's story is about a guy who was, I think, mountain climbing or something.
Yeah.
He ended up like so starved that he almost died. But then like a plane came and saved him, and then he's in the plane and he's seeing down like the Mount Kilimanjaro, and he's saying, "Oh, that's where I was trying to go," and then the guy died. And he's saying how he hates stories like that because men are always looking to their past, searching for proof that they were alive, which fits to what he's trying to say to Spike is like, hey, stop trying to go to the past where you know that it's going to
Get
end
him
up
killed.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
knows if he gets back involved with Vicious and Julia that Jet knows that if Spike goes back to Julia and gets involved with all of that, it's gonna kill him.
And he even tells Spike, turn back. He tells Spike, turn back from the past, forget it. And Spike says, listen, you know what, I can't, because there's a woman that was the part of me that's missing, and, you know, that's the part that I was longing for. And so Spike tells him that he can't just forget it, that she's back, she's involved. And then as he's saying that, Faye pulls up, and Jet says to Faye, this isn't your own repair shop.
He assumes that Faye just came back because she messed up her ship.
Right. You can't just come back here because your ship's messed up. And
throughout the series, I think Faye's ship takes the least damage of all of them.
Right? Everyone's ship is mostly Jet, and Spike's ships are always...
Spike's particularly.
Well, yeah, but Spike's are always damaged. And then Faye is there, and Faye's telling Spike, you know, that he shouldn't go as well. And then Jet, I think, was messaging somebody, and Jet says that it's too late to turn back. And I think it's when he was talking to, I think the ISSP, where he, you know, they're talking about how the old syndicate. Oh, okay. Jet was informed that the old syndicate.
Oh, right, yeah.
Was going after everyone.
Right.
And is going to eliminate everybody, including his partner. And he said, you know, don't go there, don't go there.
Basically, there'd been a coup, and now the elders want blood.
Exactly. And Jet tells this guy, listen, it's too late to turn back. Which is interesting because just a little bit before that, Jet was saying to turn back.
Yeah.
So Jet recognizes that this is going to be it. That at this point, there's nothing that can be said or done to prevent the confrontation that's going to occur.
And then Spike runs off to meet Julia because Faye had given her the message. And Julia points a gun at him, which shocked me at first.
And the what we have there is there's the battle music and the takeover of Vicious. I absolutely love that whole, if you will, scene where you've got Spike with Julia. You've got the battle going on when Vicious is supposed to be killed, and essentially what ends up happening is it's Vicious's takeover.
He's vicious. Because he's vicious. He can get out of anything.
Right. And then he tells the elders as he's killing them, you will shed tears of scarlet. And, you know, that was it. Like, Vicious is now the reigning ruler of the syndicate. And Jet tells Spike, you know what, find what you lost and get it back. So Jet knew that this is going to be it. Like, he's going to go find that missing piece of him, and who knows, you know, hopefully he comes back. But I think Jet was also reserved to know that he probably isn't. And the final scene we see is Spike holding a rose and Julia holding a gun.
It's flashback to the beginning of episode 1 when the rose falls.
Yeah.
And did you happen to watch the preview for this one, for the next one?
Yes. Yeah, I watched it.
I watched it about 3 times to listen to Faye's little monologue, because you have Spike and Jet talking over top of it, basically saying this is the last episode coming up. You know, it's been fun, but this is it.
Yeah.
And then there's this underneath that, there's this almost subliminal little monologue from Faye that I had to listen to about 3 times before I could understand it, and then it doesn't really say anything. I don't remember the exact wording, but
basically, Faye is going on about how, is this really life? Like, what is going on? And then she finishes off with the present is the present, which
men are men, women are women, present, past is past, future is future. That's right, yeah.
So she's kind of going forward saying, like, it's going to be what's going to be, like, there's no more of you going back to the past or no more of you trying to, relive something. You need to move forward. Essentially, that's what I got from that.
I think the way they sort of hid it under the main dialogue, I was just hoping for something a little more.
Yeah, I kind of think it was just a kind of sealing the deal, if you will, the ending, that this is it, just a re-emphasis of the fact that it's going to be the end, and the past is the past, the present is the present, the future is the future. Like, there's no more to it,
Right.
So going forward with the final episode of Bebop, it starts off with Julia saying it was raining that day as well. And, she's trying to tell them about how they wanted to escape, they wanted to vanish, like, let's go somewhere, let's go do, let's leave everything like you were saying, let's go and do it. And Spike says, no, you know what, I'm going to stay, we're going to stand our ground, this needs to be done. Like, you can't run from it anymore, type of thing. So they go to, was it that they went to Mars to find Annie? Because I can't remember.
I don't remember which planet they went to. I missed that completely.
As they go to find Annie, and Annie is been messed up.
Yeah. She's been shot, in the stomach, it looks like.
Yes.
And even though she'd only been in one episode before this, I was still sad to see her go.
Yeah, because I think she was kind of like the motherly figure.
Yeah.
Like, at least that's how we see her. She took care of Spike. She knows the real Spike.
And that's an interesting observation because, essentially, there's a turn in Spike's character at that point. He was willing to run with Julia, but he decides to fight to avenge Annie.
Yeah.
As much as Julia has meant to him, and as much as it's been about, his loss and his, at his, just because she didn't show up and all of that whole love story, Annie means more to him.
Yeah. And I think that tells us a lot also about Spike's character, is that, he realizes that he can't live this dream that he wanted to live in some dream world. He's got to
take Vicious down.
Right. And not only that, but it's time that he wakes up. It's time that he wakes up and he faces his reality. I mean, essentially, him being on the Bebop has been a dream for him.
It's been vacation.
And in this episode, we also get an explanation on his eye, that he has these two eyes.
I just got the whole seeing the past thing, at least an interpretation of it. Because he finally confirms flat out one of his eyes is he's talking to Faye, and he's kind of he was kind of almost yelling at her. We're being very stern with her. I forget what she'd said to set him off. But he says, look in my eyes. And when they show a close-up, you can really see the color difference for once. One is considerably more red than the other. And he says, one of them is fake. And I finally figured out it's not. I thought it was some kind of technological thing where it could only see the past. I never understood that. And I realized, no, at least, again, my interpretation, it's just a glass eye. He doesn't see anything out of it.
Yeah.
So all he sees is what he imagines, which is his past, his regret.
That's what I got, is that, one is tied to his past, and one is tied to his present.
Well, yeah, one is his normal eye, which it works like any other
Right.
eye.
But we've jumped like way far.
Well, yeah. You mentioned the eye, so I just had some to get to that point. Yeah.
So Annie was shot, and Annie is saying that without there being a leader, that there's like kites without strings flying around. And that's when Spike decides that he's not going to run away anymore. He's not going to seek some sort of escape, but he's going to stand his ground. And Jet is talking with Faye, and Jet is saying, you know, like how he had to let him go, and Faye is saying, well, why did you do that? And he goes, you know what? My leg is wrecked, my ship is wrecked, and you know, I don't give a damn anymore. And it's really funny because as soon as he says that, he's also asking about what about Julia. So I mean, into like the same sentence, he's essentially saying, I don't care, but tell me more about this Julia character.
And I actually have to go back, now that I'm thinking about it, to watch those 2 episodes, this 25 and 24, just to see if it was the same leg. I just realized his leg got messed up in 2 consecutive episodes.
Yeah, it did. Because Ein bit him.
In in 24, Ein bit him, and then he gets shot in 25.
Yeah. I wonder if it's the same leg too. I
have to go back and check. Yeah.
If that was the case. Huh. So then Jet says, I don't give a damn, and Faye explains that how she saw Julia as this dangerous, beautiful ordinary, and the angel of the underworld and the devil in paradise. So basically saying that this is going to be the end of Spike. That's how I interpreted it, is that she's going to pull him in, and it will be the end of him. That's what I interpret it as. And so Jet, you know, kind of was accepting of it. Like I mean, what more could Jet do at this point, you know? Yes. And so there's a shootout with the Syndicate and with Spike and Julia at Annie's place. And Julia is actually shot.
They're trying to get away on the roof, and one of the Syndicate snipers takes her out. And I was really shocked to see her get killed, but at the same time, thinking about it, it had to happen because that was really what pushed Spike to take the gloves off and really go hard on Vicious.
I love the image that we get when she's shot, though, with the doves flying.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really John Woo,
yes,
you know,
which they repeat at the end, but we'll get to that. There's a little bit of potential controversy there.
So after Julia's shot, Jet actually goes to the shaman to figure out where Spike is. And the shaman continues to tell him how all living things have a star, and he's talking about the guardian star, and how death is always at our side, so do not fear its cast, and if you do not fear it, then it will cast its eye upon you.
If you fear, I love this speech. It really hit a chord for me, especially recently. If you fear death, it will jump at you with the speed of light, I think it was. But if you don't fear it, it will cast its eye gently upon you.
Right. And I thought that was kind of going towards Spike's eye.
Yeah.
You know, and in terms of him accepting his situation and not having fear anymore.
Yeah.
And I think the shaman was trying to explain that to Jet about how if you fear it and you're constantly in that situation, whereas if you're just going to accept things as they come, then
if the more afraid you are, the more aware of it you are.
Right. So, and then he tells then we see Vicious, and Vicious is looking at Annie's place. He's going through, and he finds Julia's coat and her passport, and he said, well, I guess they're not really going to go anywhere. They're not going to be able to get very far. And he refers to Spike as a beast that has lost its place. Then,
I was going to say, cut to Spike, Jet and Spike on the Bebop, and that odd speech about cats.
Yes. So Spike comes back, and of course, the first thing he asks Jet is, "Do you have anything to eat?"
Okay, he's fine.
Because Spike is always eating on Bebop,
Mm.
and so he's saying like, "This tastes awful," and he's like, "It always does." And Jet says, "Well, you're eating waffle, quite a lot of it if it tastes so bad."
Mm.
And Spike says a really great thing: "Hunger is the best spice,"
Yes.
which I
Love
love.
that one.
I think I'm gonna coin that and put that in my house somewhere.
Yeah.
Hunger is the best spice.
Mm.
And then Spike has this whole cat story where he's talking about a tiger-striped cat and it's a stray, and how the cat lives like a million lives and has a bunch of different owners, but nobody really ever owns the cat. And then he meets a girl cat, and then
A white female cat, and he falls in love, and she dies, and the cat cries 1,000 tears, I think, and then dies shortly thereafter.
Yeah.
Which I understand that, because that's Spike's story.
Yeah.
Because Julia had just died. But there was, and I don't have it in my notes, but there was a few lines after that about cats that just seemed odd and out of place.
Well, when he says, "I never liked cats,"
Yeah.
it's almost like he's mocking himself.
Yeah, okay.
Like he knows that the situation is going to come to a head, if you will.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like him almost saying, this is going to happen. This is the way it's going to be now. Jet knows that he's got to go after Vicious. And Faye doesn't want him to go, and Faye's yelling at him that you're still tied to the past.
Yeah. And that's when he gives him the line about the eyes. That's right.
He says, "One eye is in the past, one eye is in reality. It's like a dream I'd never wake up from." And Faye says, "I had nowhere to return to," and she says, like, "You don't have anywhere to go." And then Spike says, "I'm going to find out if I'm really alive." So then, long story
and then violence ensues.
A lot of violence ensues.
And very noir violence. That initial battle was very noir. To the point where Shin collapses, he gets hit, he goes down, with the blood pool behind his head, and he has his final words to Spike, and it's, it's a little bit more updated from like a 40s movie, but it really follows all of those tropes.
Yes. And then you've got the final battle between...
Duel with Spike and Vicious.
Yes.
I should have remembered when they had that geek question of the day about your favorite duels the other day.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and answer that. That's a good one. Yeah. I love the exchange that goes on, because it's very like light and dark. Very like good versus evil.
Yeah.
And
I also...
You're awake. Finally.
Yeah.
And he says that I'm going to free you, and Spike says, "Well, I'm the only one who can free you," and they go back and forth.
Stage of Harry Potter, in order for one to live, the other must die.
I've never watched Harry Potter.
Oh, okay. There's a thing at the end, or him and Voldemort, one has to kill the other in order to truly live, or something. I don't remember the exact wording. But it was an interesting. The battle with the duel with Spike and Vicious. Vicious literally brought a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah. I think Vicious knew that it was going to be over.
Because Vicious is there with a katana, and Spike's got a gun, and they're dueling.
Yeah.
And understandably, a very short duel, given the fact they're different in weapon.
Yeah, but I also think that Vicious knew, as did Spike, that this was going to be their last encounter. Yeah. Spike,
He wasn't walking away from it.
Huh?
It was definite that one of them was not walking away from it.
Right. So, they fight. You can go ahead.
There's a very short fight. Vicious slashes Spike in the leg, and I think he goes for the gun hand. Spike shoots him in the chest. Vicious dies. Spike walks away, and he walks out, and there's this big long staircase, and all of the syndicate, a large portion of the syndicate army standing there. he starts to walk down the stairs. Did he have a line there or not? I think he had a line there. What did he say?
Bang.
Bang. That's why I didn't remember. It was one word. Walks down and collapses. Now, here's the question. Is he dead?
I think he is.
See, I don't think so.
No?
He had a little blood coming from his eye and a slash in the leg. What would have killed him?
Maybe his heart. I don't know.
I think he just collapsed.
You think he just collapsed and that's it?
Because he's exhausted. He just went toe-to-toe with Vicious. He got slashed. That's understandable that he would fall down and collapse, maybe pass out at that point. I think they deliberately left it ambiguous because it allows them to return.
Oh.
If they ever wanted to come back to the show, they could easily, Spike just collapsed. Maybe he took over the syndicate. Maybe he did whatever. They could easily bring him back in, go find Edward again. Edward decides she's done living with her father. She can come back.
Yeah, well, because Faye is still there.
Yeah.
So
it allows them to bring everything back if they'd chosen to. And also, I think it's more interesting. Because then what does Spike do if he's alive? Does he take over the syndicate? Or does he go back to the Bebop?
I don't think Spike would take over the syndicate. I think he would prefer to go back to the Bebop. That's my own opinion on that.
Yeah. I think most likely, yeah. I just think it's more interesting if he doesn't die.
Yeah,
Although they did have their shot of the birds flying over top again, like in Julia.
Well, that's why I thought that maybe he died, because it was very, the fanfare, the symbolism, the doves flying, very...
And they show his face, a sort of sketch of his face lying there for the last line. And that's the other hint, because it doesn't say, rest in peace, Space Cowboy or something. It's
right.
You're going to carry that weight.
Say again?
The line, instead of, they could have easily said rest in peace, Space Cowboy at the end to say that, yes, he's dead. Instead, they say you're going to carry that weight.
Yeah, you're going to carry that weight, right.
Present tense. Now, it could have been Spike's story up until now, or it could be, what do you do now?
That's interesting. Yeah, I actually now when I think about it, that makes sense. Because you're going to carry that weight as present tense.
Yeah.
So if he's done away with his past now, then he's going to carry the weight of what has happened. And
then Julia finally, Julia's death that he will not have to live with, not being able to, instead of, now he's avenged her, he still has to live without her in the world. She's now gone.
Right.
He has to move on.
So now there would be no past tying him any further.
Right.
But he's going to have to live with the weight of his reality, or of live with the weight of...
With that loss.
Not just the loss, but also the weight of him being Spike.
Yeah. Yes.
Being present, no longer having a past to hold him down to, which is very scary. If you think about it,
that's been his anchor.
Huh?
That's been his anchor.
Yeah. So now he has to carry the weight of himself. Maybe. I like that. That's a really good analysis of that. So we have finished Bebop. With that said, we've finished Cowboy Bebop. We've announced in the community that the next anime we're going to do is in honor of Jeremy's birthday. We're going to do The Devil is a Part-Timer. Have you started watching it at all?
I have not started it yet. I was running a little late today. I just had enough time to watch the latest Parasyte before we got started here.
I loved it. I absolutely... Let's get into that. So
let's just say how many episodes for the next Hangout?
You know what? There are 13 episodes in total. So if we break it up 4 episodes, I was thinking 1 through 4, something like that.
Okay.
For the next Hangout. I'm not sure what day we'll do.
Yeah, we'll work that out. Yeah.
Right. I know that there's a lot of people that have, there's a few people in the community that messaged me and said, hey, I really would like you guys to start doing this on a weekend because I can join more so on a Sunday, that sort of thing. So I think that.
And if particularly now, now that we're starting a new series, it'd be a good time to switch over. Because
Yeah,
if it had been
absolutely.
say in the middle of Bebop, that'd be a lot to catch up on. Now, just 4
Right.
episodes of
Exactly.
Part Timer.
Yeah, and Devil's a Part-Timer is a lot, I would say, lighter.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and I think I'm gonna pull rank on this after
Okay.
Devil is a Part-Timer since it's my birthday.
It's yours is coming this weekend, so
I
absolutely.
want to choose the next one.
Absolutely.
So I'm gonna post that in the community
Okay.
because I mentioned it before and I think like I really want to pull rank and just post that one up and we're gonna do that one.
All right.
So because I think everyone will really enjoy it. And you would.
Do you want to reveal what it is yet, or
Yeah,
wait?
I'm gonna tell you. It's Welcome to the NHK.
Okay.
Yeah, because I told you about it a lot. I definitely wanted to do something that is different. It has a lot of great parody moments as well. And we've gone through 2 anime, so it's enough to kind of give you an idea parody-wise, like how it would work.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it'll be 3 by the time because we're doing Part Timer first.
because we've
And
done
4,
Devil's Partner.
about 5 if you count
Actually, yeah,
the one-offs,
fully.
Fully Cooley and Tokyo Godfather. So.
And Tokyo Godfather, so there you go. We've been through 5 anime.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I didn't even think about that. I was like, oh, no, we've only done 2. No, we've done more. That's awesome.
It will 4 now. It will be 5 by the time we start the next year.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay,
so,
on to Parasyte.
On to Parasyte. Let's talk about Parasyte a little bit.
And I wish Landre was with us because he mentioned that not this latest episode, but the previous one, he said that it was a game changer in a big way, and I kind of don't get that.
I do.
He also said Shinichi was more in touch with his human side, which I understand, because he really panicked when Goto was after him. When he couldn't take he knows he can't beat Goto, and now Goto is deliberately gunning for him. So he really panics, which does show his human side.
I think what was really shocking to him also is the fact that he knows that there are certain parasite that are more human, if you will. They have more human tendencies. And the fact that they shot Hidekawa, I think his name was?
Yeah, the detective who's been working with him.
Right, the mayor, and they shot him, and then he wasn't a parasite. And the mayor was talking about how, in the world, there are good and there are evil, and there's good and evil in everything, and how, who are we to judge, like, where the human species should fall under or fall above, that sort of thing. So when Shinichi saw them kill him, I think that was something that also kind of resonated with him because he's human.
Right.
Then, on top of that, you've got the Goto. Goto is the personification of evil.
Yeah, Goto is the Terminator.
Yes, Goto is the Terminator. And not only that, Goto also is really has no drive other than to destroy, and other than to eat and murder, and so he has no other drive. And we saw that in the previous episode because there was that switch, if you will, of the 2 paths of the different parasites.
Right.
So you have the one parasite guy. It's like, hey, you know what? I've been watching how humans are doing this, and this is pretty crazy. And then Goto says, you know what? You deal with it the way you think you will. I'm going to deal with it the way I want to. So you have that definitive choice, if you will, that is definitely something that they didn't think, at least in terms of Shinichi or I mean, look at Tamareko. Like, she actually decided to save the child and to have herself killed. You're starting to see this very significant and very clear separation between the types of parasite and the types of characters that they could be.
And the difference here is the last time we saw Goto, we got a sense of how unstoppable he is, but he wasn't a direct threat. He was just kind of playing with Shinichi. he wasn't really going to go after him. Now he's targeting him.
Well, the other thing is that Goto had a like kind of like a master figure that was pulling all the stops, or was pulling all the strings rather, and telling him what to do and when to do things. Like he had Tamara Reiko, and then he had Hirakawa, who was, you know, pretty much like reining him in.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. And now Hirakawa's gone.
Giving him orders, essentially. You know. Now he has no master.
Right.
So he answers to no one. So he can go out and fully go after Shinichi the way he wants to, which is he wants to take him over. He wants him out of the picture.
Just,
you know.
Rolling back to Hirakawa's speech, he mentions that humans don't have a predator, natural predator.
Yes.
And again, I'm going to point out, they've never said that the parasites are aliens.
Oh.
I think maybe they've evolved and have become, I think they're from Earth. I think there's just this life form that evolved and have become the next step on the food chain. Finally, you know, humans aren't the top anymore.
I don't remember if they ever said that they were alien. I know that. You know what? I remember, though, when Tamara Reiko was having this discussion with somebody, I don't know who it was, but they were discussing how they were like the first stage of the cleanup, something like that. I almost feel like I have to go back and rewatch the whole show to find it. But, you know, like that was really an interesting thing to me was, okay, maybe it's not just the parasites that we should be worrying about. Maybe there's something coming after, you know?
Maybe I did miss something, because I've been specifically looking to see if they are aliens, because I almost prefer the idea that they are from Earth, and they're this life form that has, you know, leapfrogged us.
That would be really interesting. But I'd have to watch back further and see if they ever mentioned they were aliens. But what I really enjoyed about these last two episodes was that Shinichi really got scared. Like his humanity fully came out. I think he was also had fear because he realized that humans are not as good natured as well. You know, I mean, he was he's 17, all of 17, and he hasn't really witnessed or been in a situation where he's...
As much as he's been through, he's still a teenager, and he's still kind of jaded, and not jaded, the opposite, kind of naive.
Right, he is definitely naive. And so he hasn't really seen any humans that were extremely violent, that were doing it for anything other than, you know, a defensive purpose.
And here has, for, you know, a few episodes, we've got the one guy, I'm blanking on his name, he's got the weird scar on his head.
Yes, and so he is seeing that maybe humans can be monsters too, because that guy was willing to kill everybody in the building to find all the parasites in the building. And so I also thought that kind of was something for him that was shocking, because up until now, all the humans have been good. All the humans have been about protecting humanity and protecting the people, and, you know, keeping the innocent alive and that sort of thing. So for him to have that shift and to see that shift, and I think it also really nailed it home when Hirakawa was human, and then Goto was just full slaughter of everything.
And then juxtaposing that with the death of Tamara Reiko, who was the other side of that equation. She was the parasite who didn't want to kill unnecessarily.
Yes. And even Tamara Reiko was trying to discover how humans and parasites could coexist, and saying that, you know, we could try to subsist on human food. And she was running experiments with that, which I thought was very, very interesting. You know what we haven't seen, though, is we haven't seen any progression of the baby. You know, so we don't know what's happening with the baby up until this point. And I guess because we kind of have to deal with this big challenge, which is Goto.
And I think that's going to be the big reveal at the end.
The baby?
The baby's going to be the linchpin that they're putting on the back burner so we forget about him, and then somehow that's going to be a factor at the end.
That would be interesting. If that ends up being a factor, I would like to see where they're going to go with that. I mean,
it just feels like
the baby is human parasite.
Because the baby hasn't been seen since the park.
Right.
Hasn't even been mentioned.
Right.
It just kind of feels like they're trying to make us forget about him.
Yeah, maybe. So what ended up happening in that episode, which I thought also, Shinichi decides that he's going to really embrace his humanity, and he ends up making love to what's her name?
Satomi.
Satomi, yeah. So I mean, and that I kind of knew was going to come along at some point, you know. I mean,
I think it's the it's the opening sequence where they show them, you know, together, and so they had to hook up at some point.
Right. Right. I think for me that wasn't so much of a big reveal. I mean, you kind of saw that one coming,
and
but
he was
also,
so shaken. It was basically the life-affirming act.
Right. Right. Because I think he also kind of was trying to maybe almost give up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, give up on not just his humanity but also his survival.
Yeah.
You know, because he felt at this point like, okay, there's nothing that can be done.
Mm-hmm.
And that act.
She was the one holding, and she, even before it happened, in their conversation, she was basically saying, "Don't give up."
Yeah.
Basically, she was effectively she was his anchor. She was the one keeping him alive, effectively, at that point.
Yeah, she was. Not only was she keeping him alive, but she was also reminding him of why he's there.
Yeah.
You know, what it is that he's trying to protect, what it is that, you know, he's holding to, if you will. So that was why, you know, him, you know, deciding to have sex with Satomi was so big, because it also was like his spiritual moment too, where he connected with his humanity.
Yeah.
He connected,
and given their ages, most likely both of their first times.
Right, and there's also his emotions and everything. So it was all wrapped up in that significant like change in his life.
Right.
And also him realizing, now this is something I have to protect.
But the one thing, again, the reason I wish Landre was here was because he said there was something that happened in that episode that made you wonder how it could continue from here. And that's what I didn't see. I see the embracing of his humanity, but I see nothing that questions how it can go from there. In the next episode, we get that. I
think when he's maybe saying in terms of where can it go from here, is because now what is Shinichi going to do? Like,
he
fully embraced his humanity, but he still has his parasite part, you know? So how can he do both? Like, is he going to choose? He's going to choose his humanity.
Right.
You know?
What happens to his parasite?
Right. And I think especially this next episode, which was just aired, that was hard. That was a crazy episode.
Yeah.
I did not expect like that kind of decision to be made.
There were a lot of shades of the story arc where he met Uda, where he was staying at the hotel for a while. Where in this case he's staying with an elderly woman. Yeah.
And I think to me, when, you know, he not only he has this situation where Goto is going to come after him and he knows it, you know, he's also trying to protect as many people as he can, and at the same time trying to survive, and at the same time, you know, trying to not reveal that he's got this parasite part to him. So it's a lot of stress to be going on all at once.
And I loved when they stole the car and he said, "Oh great, on top of everything, now I'm a criminal." Like,
right.
You've got this.
Funny because he still maintains his moral compass.
Yeah, but he's got this killing machine after him,
Yeah.
and he's worried about now I'm a criminal.
Right, which is pretty funny considering that, he should be more concerned about how he's going to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, with Goto coming after him now, I don't, after the fact that he has separated Migi, and he knew Migi was going to, Migi sacrificed himself, which, that's huge. The fact that the parasite has evolved
to the point where it is, Shinichi's getting back in touch with his humanity, and much like in the middle of the series where Shinichi became more parasite, now Migi has become
more human.
Effectively, he's taken on traits of a human.
Right, because if you look at an animal instinct, there's no other being that would really
humans are it. And particularly with the parasites, that's been the whole conflict between Shinichi and Migi has been Migi is always about calculating the odds. It's all been about survival.
Right, and
it's about surviving.
It's very much like Tamara Reiko saving the baby.
Yes.
And killing herself.
Right.
Because Migi chose to separate from Shinichi in hopes to try to do like a 1 millionth infinity chance that they can just chop off Goto's head.
Yeah. And also, I think part of that calculation was that he knew that without Migi, Goto wouldn't be able to sense Shinichi. So Shinichi could get away from him if it went bad.
Yeah. Which it did.
And did you notice the brief glimpse of Uda in that scene?
No.
Uda is the one who showed up in the story arc when he was staying at the hotel who had the parasite on his neck.
Yeah.
I think I saw Uda stick his parasite up and distract Goto. There was another parasite other than Migi. There was the fourth character there who was a parasite, and I'm pretty sure it was Uda. Because Uda had been mentioned previously in the episode.
I didn't see it was Uda.
There was another parasite, and it looked like it was on somebody's chin. So I think it may have been Uda showing up. I think he might pop up in the next episode.
Oh, I hope he does. That would be good. One thing that I think is interesting too is that we still have some of Migi's cells. After everything, there's a little bit of Migi left.
Which gives me an idea of where they're going to go now that Migi is probably dead.
Where do you think they're going to go?
Those cells are going to develop into another Migi.
Right, but how can that happen if
there's not enough left?
So weak that they can't develop, which is what he says.
Yeah, that's
if
Migi is dead, and did we see a body?
We didn't see a body, but Migi did shrivel, and Migi said that I feel alone, and now I know what death is like. Something to that effect. So.
Odds are Migi's dead, which, in order for Shinichi to have a part in the story, there needs to be another Migi. If he's free and clear, if he's just all human now, he can just run.
Yeah, but Shinichi has Migi in him still.
Yeah, because
Migi infiltrated his body after he was shot. Or after he was...
to save him, yeah.
Yeah. So Migi still is in him, and he knows that he's still in him because even in his dream state, he's still talking to Migi.
Right. And he saw the little eye on his skull.
Right. So I don't know how they can go from here to reconstitute Migi from his arm, but that would be really...
I suspect they'll find a way.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I don't see them saving actual Migi, given that he shriveled. I think he's done.
Yeah, well, we don't know. I mean, we actually don't know if Migi died.
And
we're led to assume that he did because...
But it's also the standard rule, unless you see the body, they're still alive.
That is a standard rule. Speaking of standard rules, Aldnoah Zero wow, the show has taken a real 180 to me.
Oh,
Much
okay.
more interesting. Definitely gotten increasingly interesting. The princess, it's her like 5th attempt at death. They tried to kill her 5 times or something, but she's awakened and she is pretty pissed off with Slane, the main character's main adversary, if you will's decisions to go and to war with Earth. And Inaho actually is showing that he's not perfect. Like he makes a decision that's not necessarily the best decision, but then he is able to overcome that because he ends up realizing that he had made a mistake. So he has learning still. And what's going to be really interesting is to see where it moves forward from here, because Slane has decided to pretty much imprison the princess, as well as the other princess who he has been lying to for a little while, saying like, "Oh yeah, your sister's still in a coma. Like, sorry, I hope she recovers soon." But in reality, she's awake. So I wonder where it's gonna go from here. Slane, is the bad guy, if you will, but he wants to remake Earth in a way that he thinks the princess would enjoy.
So the well-intentioned villain.
Yeah, but at the same time...
Well, in his head, well-intentioned.
Yeah, well-intentioned in his head. And now we have an introduction of a new character, which I think is very interesting, who knows Slane's father. So if you've been watching Aldnoah Zero, if you haven't, I would say it's an interesting story to get into. The first 10 episodes are like you want to shoot yourself a little bit, but it's definitely taken a change.
And this is the second season?
Huh?
This is the second season?
Yeah.
So, okay, roughly the first half is iffy, and then it gets good.
Yeah, so check it out and see. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. But yeah, so we've been at it for a little while now. So we'll figure out our next hangout and everything.
All right.
And
but it's first four of Devil is a Part-Timer probably for the weekend? Or no, not this weekend because it's your birthday, so...
Yeah, so let's say next weekend, but we'll confirm everything in the community because, like I said, I want to switch it up so everybody gets a chance to get in on the hangouts. I know that a lot of people are working during the week, so it's really hard. So, all right, well, I hope you have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you.
Bye. Bye.